Channel 5.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Soviet leader Yuri Andropov has died in Moscow at the age of 69. No successor is known. President Reagan has decided he will not attend the funeral on Tuesday. Andropov died yesterday afternoon, Moscow time, apparently of kidney failure and complications from diabetes. He ruled just 15 months, a shorter time than any of the four men who preceded him. He was the oldest communist ever to win Kremlin power, and after Lenin, the youngest to die while in office. Word of Andropov's death was withheld almost a full day, indicating the Kremlin power struggle already is well underway. Our coverage begins with Mark Phillips in Moscow and Bill McLaughlin in Washington.
The flags over the Kremlin were lowered to half-staff following the announcement of Yuri Andropov's death. In the 21.5 hours between his actual death and the announcement, the state funeral mechanism had been mobilized. Red flags draped in black appeared all over central Moscow, and a mood of quiet mourning took over the city. The news of Andropov's death did not come as a complete surprise. Although the Soviet people had been told he was recovering from a cold and was working, there was speculation here, as in the West, about his health. When the regular programming of Soviet radio and TV was interrupted this morning, it was clear somebody important had died. In mid-afternoon, the announcement came.
После продолжительной болезни скончался Юрий Владимирович Andropov.
Soon after the announcement, there was a rush to buy posters of Andropov. He had made some real improvements in the availability of consumer goods, and his death seems to have been greeted with some genuine sadness. Now comes the thorny question of succession. Will the power bloc of the military and the police, which managed to get Andropov appointed, also nominate his successor? Or will the old Brezhnev power bloc prevail? And also, having lost two leaders in such quick succession, will the ruling Politburo opt for a younger man this time? These are the questions in Moscow this evening, and right now there are no complete answers. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Moscow.
In the Byzantine world of Soviet politics, the man who gets to bury the leader usually becomes the leader. 72-year-old Politburo member Konstantin Chernenko has been named to head the funeral delegation, a post Andropov himself had when Leonid Brezhnev died just over a year ago. Chernenko is the ultimate survivor. For a quarter of a century, he faithfully served Brezhnev as his right-hand man. Chernenko was passed over when Andropov seized power, but managed to retain his Politburo post. Senior U.S. officials say all signs point to Chernenko as Andropov's successor. They say this means continuity, only minimal change in Soviet domestic and foreign policy. Chernenko is said to believe in economic reform, greater efficiency for the system, but no change of the system. The sources do not believe Chernenko is strong enough to rule alone. They say it will more likely be a collective leadership, with Chernenko relying heavily on the old guard, Defense Minister Dmitry Ustinov and Foreign Minister Andrei Gromyko, both in their 70s. As the party's ideologist, Chernenko is also said to have the support of the KGB. It appears, then, that the Soviet Union will be ruled by an alliance of very conservative, very old men. The apparent losers are the new generation brought along by Yuri Andropov, ambitious youngsters in their 60s and 50s like Politburo members Grigory Romanov and Mikhail Gorbachev.
What this means for the U.S., sources say, may depend more on Washington than on Moscow. The future of U.S.-Soviet relations may well depend on how the Reagan administration reacts during this transition period, and on its ability to seize opportunities or even create them. Bill McLaughlin, CBS News, the State Department.
Of all of Lenin's successors, Yuri Andropov was the only Kremlin leader never to meet with an American president. And history may well record that his tenure was noted for some of the worst relations with the United States. The problem of U.S.-Soviet relations dominated the day for President Reagan, vacationing in California. Leslie Stahl is there.
President Reagan will not go to Andropov's funeral. Vice President Bush will head the U.S. delegation. But CBS News has learned that Mr. Reagan will propose a summit meeting with the new Soviet leader to take place in about 2 or 3 months. According to a senior official, the idea is that an administration representative will go to Moscow and arrange such a meeting. The president spent the day at his ranch. He was awakened with news of Andropov's death at 3:20 a.m. He sent a message of condolences to Moscow, then throughout the morning collected views on whether he should attend the funeral. Generally, his foreign policy advisors urged no. After all, he didn't go when Brezhnev died. His political people said yes, but some were persuaded that a meeting in the spring would be better timing. Advice from outside the administration was nearly unanimous, though, crossing party lines, that Mr. Reagan should grasp this opportunity to improve U.S.-Soviet relations.
The very gesture of doing it carries significance in terms of your future relationships.
The question in people's mind is whether the president has the capacity and the mindset to reach out to the Soviets.
And perhaps now is a time for a gesture that might even break through and make us able to negotiate better negotiations in the future.
It would give the opportunity for the leadership in the Kremlin to see that President Reagan is a strong man, but a reasonable man, and not a reckless cowboy.
In a conciliatory statement, Secretary of State Shultz urged a more positive relationship with the Soviets, but indicated that the ball is in their court, that U.S. policy is not going to change.
We have our strength, we have our determination to defend our interests and our values, and we are prepared to deal constructively with the leadership that is put forward by the Soviet Union.
Leslie, given the tone of Secretary of State Shultz, do you see the president making any moves to bring about a breakthrough on arms control?
Well, we're told that he won't make any new arms control proposals. He's certainly not going to offer to take those missiles out of Europe or stop production of the MX missile. But he is going to, as I said before, have an offer of a summit meeting. He's going to drop his precondition that he's had all along, that he'd only meet with the Soviet leader if he could be guaranteed ahead of time that the meeting would be a success.
Leslie, how much does this dropping of the precondition for a summit meeting have to do with the president's re-election campaign?
Well, you could say that in wanting to have a meeting in about 3 months, which would be springtime, could be considered political, but I'm told by his advisors that the president genuinely wants a thaw in relations with the Soviets, and I think proposing this should be read in that spirit, Dan.
Thank you, Leslie. I'll have more news in a moment.
If you're pouring Kellogg's Corn Flakes, you've earned a special place on the front of America's favorite cereal. Sit down to a familiar face, the face of a Kellogg Corn Flake lover, the face of America too. When you sit down to America's favorite cereal, the face on the package is you. So sit down to a familiar face.
What does it take to excel?
I know the deadline. You'll get it tomorrow.
It takes speed, reliability, economy. It takes express mail next day service from the post office. Our 2-pound pack is just $9.35 overnight, and we deliver over 95,000 packages on time every day.
Yes, we got them. Oh, and Jerry, thanks.
Express mail service. We deliver excellence for less.
With 15 years' experience in running the KGB, the Soviet spy agency, Andropov was in a strong position to grab power following Leonid Brezhnev's death in November 1982. It took Andropov just 8 months to consolidate that power. However, illness never allowed him to capitalize on his rule. He was absent from public view for more than a third of his reign. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer in New York and former CBS News Moscow correspondent Don McNeil, who is now based in Tel Aviv, combined to assess the Andropov months.
On the day of Brezhnev's funeral, Yuri Andropov uttered the phrase, "Détente with the United States," from the top of the Lenin Mausoleum. It was the first time that word had been heard in Moscow for months. It was an optimistic beginning, and optimistic for the Americans as well, as Bob Schieffer explains.
In Washington, there was also a lot of talk that Brezhnev's death might bring with it a thaw in Soviet-American relations, but the president decided not to go to Brezhnev's funeral. He sent Vice President Bush and Secretary of State Shultz instead, and they delivered a pointed message to the Soviet leader that a real thaw could come only when the Soviets modified their international behavior. And Shultz and the president soon made it clear no real thaw was coming.
If you look at the problems that are before us, on the whole, they're problems that they have created.
They are the focus of evil in the modern world.
In less than a year, relations soured considerably. Arms control negotiations went nowhere. The rhetoric got tougher.
Despite President Reagan's tough rhetoric, from spring to late summer of last year, what had been a chilly relationship seemed from the Soviet point of view to be warming up, and they were playing their part. They released 15 Pentecostalists who had been trying for years to leave the Soviet Union. They signed a grain agreement with Secretary of Agriculture Bloch. Andropov invited Samantha Smith, an American schoolgirl, to visit his country. And Andropov himself met with a group of American senators.
That meeting with the American senators on August 18th was the last time Andropov was seen in public. But by this point, there were signs the Reagan administration was looking for some way to reduce tension. Some in the White House even thought a summit might be possible in 1984.
But on the night of September 1st, the Soviets shot down a Korean airliner, killing 269 people. And any hope for the warming relationship went down with it. The Kremlin was furious, believing it had been deliberately and cleverly provoked by the United States, that it was tricked into appearing as a cruel and ruthless state. The military chief of staff, Marshal Olgarkov, argued they had been tricked, that the Americans were really spying. From the Soviet point of view, the most important issue was the deployment of American crews and Pershing II missiles in Western Europe. Andropov desperately wanted to stop it. Moscow thought it was being more than reasonable by cutting back the number of SS-20s to be deployed from 250 to 162, then to 140, and on down to 120. It was an implicit admission that they had deployed too many missiles, and now it was the United States that was being intransigent.
Although it showed strain at some points, the NATO alliance held firm, and deployment of the American crews and Pershing II missiles began in Europe as scheduled at the end of the year. As many expected, the Soviets left the arms negotiations in Geneva, but this time the Reagan administration reaction was low-key. In essence, the president said, "We still want to negotiate. If the Soviets come back, we'll be there." But thus far, the Soviets have shown no indication they want to come back, nor has there been any sign that any real change in the relationship is in the works.
In the last months of the Andropov regime, vilification reached new depths. From the Soviet point of view, it was impossible to deal with President Reagan. They accused him of mouthing obscenities and hypocritical preaching. The reality from the Soviet point of view was that President Reagan seemed not only to be denying the Soviets' coveted claim to equal status with the United States as a superpower, but even challenging its right to exist as a legitimate state. If there are two sides to this story, the Soviet one has it that the Reagan administration is the apostle of the arms race. They are truly shocked by a $1.6 trillion American military buildup. There's a good chance that Andropov's successor could be even tougher to deal with.
Several sources now have confirmed to CBS News congressional correspondent Phil Jones that the United States did indeed provide the Soviets with medical equipment to treat Andropov's kidney disease. When asked about such reports last week by CBS News, the White House had flatly denied them. We'll have more on the implications of Yuri Andropov's death later in this broadcast, and CBS News will broadcast a special report on developments in the Soviet Union tonight at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time.
Recently, when some of America's top corporations were choosing a charge card for their executives, one card stood out. Corning Glass clearly saw the benefits of a card honored worldwide. United Technologies was very high on the financial freedom of its flexible spending limit. And because it's from Citicorp, it appealed to the hard-driving executives at Mack Trucks. Apply for a Diners Club card, because what works for the executives at these corporations will work for you. Citicorp Diners Club, when you mean business.
Most people who use Black & Decker power tools on weekends probably don't know why they keep on going strong year in, year out. But the pro who's got to cut through 2-inch angle iron with a Black & Decker chop saw, he knows why. He knows that like everything Black & Decker makes, this chop saw is built tough and reliable and strong. In other words, it's built like a Black & Decker.
It was Israel's turn today to go on the attack in Lebanon. Israeli warplanes bombed suspected Palestinian guerrilla bases in the mountains east of Beirut. Lebanese radio said the airstrike apparently was in retaliation for the firing of 3 Soviet-made rockets into northern Israel. In Beirut, it was getaway day for more than 1,000 Americans and other foreigners. Their evacuation was aided by the United States and other countries. Some were flown out to the U.S. Sixth Fleet ships. Others were flown directly to Cyprus. Not as fortunate as those who got out today are those caught in the middle of Beirut's war. Caught in the middle, literally, as Doug Tennell reports from one area right on the Green Line.
The neighborhood of Ras an-Naba is neither west nor east Beirut. When this became a divided city again this week, Ras an-Naba and almost everyone who lives there were caught in the middle, and that's the most dangerous place to be.
can reasonably speak of thousands of people trapped all along the actual front line in between West and East Beirut. Trying to enter these areas is really risking his life.
A team of relief workers tried to enter the district with a shipment of food and medicine today. There was to have been a ceasefire here. All sides claimed to agree. But once the convoy reached the front line, snipers opened up anyway. They just don't seem to care who strays into their sights. The first food and medicine to arrive since the fighting between Beirut's militiamen caught the whole neighborhood by surprise. There is no way of knowing how many more lie hungry and sick and unable to get away from the city's battlefront.
There was just a little relief for Ras El Naba today and a little more hope for tomorrow, but still it's a place where everyone is asking what will happen next, and no one has the answer. Doug Tennell, CBS News in Ras El Naba.
The Reagan administration appeared today to have firmed up its plans for a slow withdrawal of the U.S. Marines from their Beirut airport base. A senior official disclosed that all the Marines, except a small contingent assigned to guard the embassy, will be pulled out of Lebanon by the end of this month. Fog shrouded much of the nation today from Minnesota to Louisiana. The fog blanketed most of Minnesota, temporarily closing Minneapolis-St. Paul's International Airport and slowing flights through the morning. The fog combined with ice to shut down a main freeway north of the Twin Cities for more than 5 hours, but not before a 10-mile stretch was clogged with accidents, including a 7-vehicle pileup. No serious injuries were reported in these fog mishaps. A Chicago man was pulling his young son on a sled along Lake Michigan last month. The boy and the sled slipped into the lake. When the father attempted to rescue the lad, the ice broke and both plunged into the frigid water. They were rescued, but not before the boy suffered hypothermia and cardiac arrest. Karen Stone picks up the story.
Doctors weren't sure 4-year-old Jimmy Tantalevich would even survive the accident that submerged him in icy Lake Michigan for more than 20 minutes. 4 weeks ago, he lay in a coma. This week, he's beginning to walk and talk.
He was pointing to a picture and he says, "What is this?"
His first words, but it's the tight hugs his mother gets now that mean the most.
You know he recognizes you.
Oh, yes, now I do.
So far, he's been surprising. He's made some major steps more quickly than we expected.
We're trying to get him to do what he used to do at home. His favorite snack is animal crackers.
But Jimmy's doctor cautions a long recovery lies ahead, and his mother, who once recorded her infant's first steps and words, is hopefully watching that process all over again.
He still isn't Jimmy. And I don't know how close he's going to get back to his normal Jimmy. So far, he's doing real good.
Karen Stone, CBS News, Chicago.
The Space Shuttle astronauts finished up a floating news conference in weightless space today before getting down to the business of getting down tomorrow. What's planned to be the first shuttle landing in Florida home port instead of the California desert. One big difference, there'll be a last-minute sweep of the Florida runway for wild pigs and alligators. The government today reported that food prices jumped 2.7% in January, the biggest one-month hike since the summer of 1980. And that fed the sharpest rise in wholesale prices in 14 months. 0.6%. The Labor Department report reflected the remorseless rise in the cost of some food staples over the past year. But economists suggested that last month's surge in overall wholesale prices was the result of the harsh winter and not the signal for another round of inflation. And a White House spokesman noted that except for food prices, wholesale prices were unchanged the past 4 months.
Fiber. Nature puts it into foods, and we take it out. So to get enough fiber, you may have to eat more foods. And that can mean more calories. That's why you may need Metamucil. Metamucil is made from good grain fiber. Fiber your body needs, with a fraction of the calories in a bowl of bran cereal. And doctors recommend Metamucil more often than any other laxative brand. Metamucil. Still the low-calorie way to get the fiber you need every day.
Right now, when you buy certain T-Datic insulation, you'll get more than high-quality, energy-saving fiberglass. You'll also get a $1 rebate. In fact, you'll get $1 back for each of the first 40 rolls of certain T-R19 you buy. Of course, an offer this good can't last forever, so look for the Certainteed Buck-a-Bundle rebate display at participating dealers now. You'll save money, saving energy.
At Sarajevo, Yugoslavia today, the Soviet flag in the Olympic Village was at half-staff in honor of Yuri Andropov. The already tight security was tightened further with guards turning away, all except members of the Soviet Olympic team. The few Soviet athletes who would comment said that Andropov's death was tragic, but that the team will continue its quest for Olympic medals. They've already won 4 such medals. At the end of the day, the Soviets paid private tribute to their leader. The list of men who led the Soviet Union is a brief one: Lenin, Stalin, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, and Andropov. Of these, the least known is Yuri Andropov. And in his commentary tonight, Bill Moyers suggests lessons to be learned from the life and the legacy of that enigmatic Moscow man who died yesterday. Bill?
First, it was said to be a cold, then a temporary illness that confined him to bed. Then came rumors of kidney trouble, a viral infection, possibly a stroke. Month after month, Andropov was ill and out of sight, the men around him refusing to say in a simple, straightforward way, "Our president is seriously sick." A friend of mine, a student of Soviet affairs, says this remains the single most curious, mysterious, and frightful part of it. Late into the 20th century, one of the 2 great powers on earth, determined to play a central role in the community of nations, is so consumed with secrecy and control that it perceives candor about its leader's illness to be an admission of weakness. What this reveals of the enduring nature of the Soviet state should temper our speculation about what might happen next. Those predictions, when Andropov came to power, that he would put his country on a fresh course, proved wrong. His time in office was one of setbacks in foreign policy and failures at home to reform the economy. Only in doing what it does naturally, imposing ideological conformity, did the system work best under Andropov. He made life harder for dissenters, cracked down on writers, and demanded more communist propaganda from the theater. Said the party newspaper Pravda to the secret police, "We don't know who you are, but we have boundless faith in you. You are needed as the air and the sun." So Yuri Andropov is dead, but Big Brother is alive and well in 1984. This reality will persist. No matter who comes to power in Moscow, the system tolerates change slowly, if at all. We must deal with it of necessity, but patiently and pragmatically, expecting no dramatic breakthrough, but encouraging no dramatic breakdown either. If we and the Soviets share too little in common to approach life in the same way, we both possess too much power to want our mutual suspicions to explode in dangerous confrontation. Dan?
Thank you, Bill. We'll have reports from the Soviet Union and the American Midwest in a minute.
Before you buy the new Michelin XA4 all-season radio, remember this. Every XA4 has 20 million miles of testing behind it to prove it performs like a snow tire, and like a tire designed for the rain, and like a great handling highway tire, and to prove it keeps on performing mile after mile after mile. After 20 million miles, the Michelin XA4 proved it had nothing left to prove. Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
The Great Toilet Bowl Cleaner Challenge game. How many compartments does your cleaner have?
1. Tank 2 has 2.
Does yours have bleach that cleans well for 30 days?
Yes. Yes.
Detergents?
No. Tank 2 has 4.
Blue freshness?
No. Blue freshness with every flush.
So for 30 days without routine scrubbing, Tank 2 gives you much more.
Digel tops plain acids. We proved it in recent laboratory tests. Cutting the yellow top off a Digel tablet illustrates the results. Without its top layer, Digel consumes as much heartburn-producing acid as plain acids like Rolaids. What's more, Digel has the yellow top and gives you the fast gas-calming action of simethicone. Conclusion: when you want more than plain relief, Digel tops plain acids.
For all the Soviet and American hot rhetoric and Cold War, for all the talk of Soviets and Americans eyeball to eyeball, if you looked into the eyes of some Soviet citizens today, what you saw was familiar. The look of people who had just heard news that could change their world, news that, loved or hated, expected or not, the leader of their nation was dead. The look of people who know that one of the two men with the power to push the nuclear button is gone, that there will be someone new with that power. Bruce Morton looks now at some Americans who woke up this morning and heard the news that the world had changed, and who hope it will now change for the better.
The people here woke up to thick fog and the news that Yuri Andropov had died. The news had a special importance in Coon Rapids. This is where Nikita Khrushchev came to visit Roswell Garst's farm in 1959, and visitors have traveled from here to the Soviet Union in the years since then. In the P&S coffee shop, Garst's widow Elizabeth was worried about the chill between Washington and Moscow.
I don't think they want war any more than we do. I'm very hopeful that it'll be a change.
Her worry was shared.
Well, I think it's natural for somebody to worry about something like that, because all it takes is a push of one button.
We just can't live in a world where we're going to be insulting one another all the time amid 50,000 atomic warheads that none of us dare use. I'm not interested in being bacon crisp.
Charlie Nixon edits the Weekly Enterprise.
Well, I'd hope that there'd be more honesty in the negotiation process with the new premier.
A few blocks away at the high school, some juniors and seniors who weren't born when Khrushchev was here discussed Andropov's death with teacher Wayne Herman. They had a suggestion for President Reagan.
What do you think Reagan should do?
Go to the funeral,
of course.
And talk to each other.
Because if they get a compromising leader, then Reagan and their new leader, as long as they're compromising, we could not have the fear as much of the nuclear war.
We've all got the chance now to start and
start
a reduction instead of both of us being stubborn and holding our ground.
People here think relations between the U.S. and the Soviet Union are bad now, and that worries them. They're at least a little hopeful that with somebody new in Moscow, things may improve. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Coon Rapids, Iowa.
And that's the CBS News for this Friday. Bob Schieffer will be here tomorrow. Until our special report later tonight on the death of Soviet President Yuri Andropov, Dan Rather reporting from New York.
Ooh, aspirin stomach upset. Somebody should make an arthritis pain reliever that works safer. Well, Ecotrin did, safer than plain or even buffered aspirin. And now there's Ecotrin capsules, tested and proven safer for your stomach with unique safety-coated aspirin granules. And aspirin's what doctors and pharmacists recommend most for minor arthritis pain. Ecotrin, new capsules or original tablets. Ecotrin, it's safety-coated. It's orange.
The good life in America means reaching for your dream.
It means building. Building is in our blood. As one of the largest real estate investors, the Equitable puts up skyscrapers, malls, hospitals, hotels. But what we're building is a better way of life.
We are the Equitable. Yes, we'll help you live the good life. We are the Equitable. We can help your dreams come true.
Would you trade this bulk laxative for your Senecot tablets?
No, I would not trade. I don't like being bothered with a bulk. I prefer the Senecot.
We asked users of bulk and liquid laxatives to try gentle, effective Senecot. Does it work overnight?
It works the next morning. It was fabulous. You keep your milk of magnesium, and I will keep my Senecot.
Tablets or pleasant-tasting granules. Natural vegetable Senecot laxative.
I can count on Senecot.
Tomorrow, there's a college basketball doubleheader with Brigham Young meeting third-ranked Georgetown and number 2 DePaul against Notre Dame on the home of the NCAA Championship, CBS Sports.
This is CBS.
In our news tonight, sponsors of the amusement tax are ready to try again Monday to get that legislation passed by the state Senate. There has been another drug raid in Bowling Green, the second in the past month. And there are some big plans to bring a facelifting to Nashville's Farmers Market. We'll have details on these stories and a lot more coming up next on Eyewitness News.
From Television 5, this is Eyewitness News, weather, and sports.